On October 14, 2023, at 3:17 a.m., I slipped away from this world, and everything I thought I knew unraveled. My name is Ahmad Karim, and I grew up beneath the winding minarets of Konya, Turkey, in a family whose devotion to Islam shaped every breath I took. From my earliest memory of reciting the Iftar at age 5, my life followed a rhythm of dawn prayers, Quranic study circles, then family gatherings where faith was both anchor and compass. By age 35, I had become an Imam at the local mosque, leading Ramadan fasts, guiding youth classes, and offering counsel to grieving widows. I measured my worth by ritual, the number of rak'ahs I performed, the strength of my sermons, the weight of my charity. My conviction was unshakable until that night on a remote Anatolian road. Returning from a midnight sermon, I rounded a blind curve. A stray goat darted onto the asphalt. My car skidded violently, and I was hurled from the road. In that split second, my head struck the guardrail with such force that my vision shattered into blackness, and pain dissolved into a profound stillness. In the ambulance, I felt neither heat nor cold, only a sensation of drifting beyond the boundaries of flesh. My heart beat silently beneath the sirens, and I became aware of the fragile veil between life and something far stranger. Growing up, my father, a carpenter, taught me that faith must be forged through humble service. As a boy, I would wander into the wheat fields at dawn, reciting verses aloud, feeling each word carried by the wind to an unseen presence. These moments fostered in me an unshakable belief in divine mercy, until the accident showed me mercy itself might transcend all. Everything I believed would carry me into paradise now felt inadequate, like an unfinished verse. As awareness slipped, I clung to the Shahada's final syllables, and with the last echo of La ilaha illa Allah, I crossed into darkness. What I saw changed my understanding of life and death forever. When the last echo of my heartbeat faded, I found myself plummeting through a void so vast it felt infinite. There was no up or down, only a cold emptiness that swallowed light. Gradually, the void coalesced into something monstrous, a sky the color of dried blood, veined with cracks of molten gold. Beneath me spread a wasteland of shattered stone pillars and roiling embers. The air tasted of iron and ash, and every breath felt like inhaling shards of glass. My feet touched cracked obsidian ground that glowed from within like dying coals. With each step I took, the rock crumbled into dusty sparks. Jagged formations rose around me, towers of bone and granite entwined in impossible angles, as if reality itself had buckled under some ancient weight. The pillars were scorched black, their surfaces etched with symbols I could not read but somehow recognized as warnings. At times, I glimpsed faces frozen in agony, their mouths open in silent screams, their eyes hollow wells reflecting my own terror. Sounds drifted on the sulphurous wind, distant moans, the clang of unseen chains, and the occasional crack of a whip against brittle flesh. Somewhere to my left, water sizzled against lava, sending up steam that reeked of decay. I covered my mouth, but the stench seeped through my clothes, lodging in my throat. Doors of flame stood ajar at the base of a jagged cliff, and behind them flickered rows of torches that revealed rows of sentries, humanoid shapes half submerged in molten rock, their skin glittering like scorched parchment. Everywhere I looked, there were displaced fragments of humanity, a crowd huddled within a cavern of frozen fire, their tears congealed into spikes of ice, a bridge of fractured bones spanning a chasm of black smoke where tortured figures reached for me and recoiled, a field of shattered mirrors reflecting my face back at me over and over, each version twisting into a new horror. In one clearing, a fountain of blood arced into a basin studded with rusted swords, and within that pool floated the faces of children my age, their eyes pleading. I wanted to reach for them but the ground quaked, and the water boiled away in a plume of steam. As I ventured forward, I realized there was no single path. Ropes of smoldering sinew snaked across the terrain, like arteries leading to unseen hearts. I climbed one and it snapped, sending me tumbling into a valley where the sky wept black rain that hissed on contact with my skin. I gasped and felt my flesh burn, but each droplet seemed to sharpen my senses, imprinting every detail into my mind. It was as though the realm itself wanted me to see, to understand the breadth of suffering contained within its borders. Above the valley rose a wall of iron gates. The lock was a gaping maw glittering with razor teeth, and each tooth bore the name of someone I had wronged in my life, the careless insult here, a moment of pride there, a silent betrayal I had convinced myself was justified. My heart pounded as I approached, and the wind carried faint echoes of my own sermons about mercy and justice. Now those words sounded hollow, like the promise of rain in a desert long since dead. I reached out to touch the gate, and the teeth snapped shut around my wrist. Pain like I had never known tore through me, yet it forced me to stare into those names, forced me to confront every wound I had inflicted. My vision blurred with tears of blood. In that moment, the sky split open and a low chorus of lament rose from the ground itself, as if the earth were mourning an ancient wrong. And then, at the edge of my perception, I sensed a presence, soothing yet overwhelming. A light glimmered behind the iron wall, a hue of pure white that seemed impossible in this place. I felt warmth blossom where the gate had beaten me, and a whisper echoed through my mind, "There is more than this." But before I could follow that voice, the wind carried new sounds, footsteps, guttural and deliberate. Shapes began to emerge from the shadows, and I realized I was not alone in this realm of torment. The iron teeth finally released me, and I stumbled forward into a deeper abyss. My wrist throbbed with molten agony, but the pain anchored me to this hellish plane. The sky above had shifted, jagged streaks of crimson clouds now pulsed like veins, and the air vibrated with the distant clang of forging hammers. I realized I was no longer wandering aimlessly, I was being drawn toward a roaring voice that echoed from a cavern beyond. I followed the sound, each step lighter than air yet heavier than lead. The walls on either side closed in, narrowing into a tunnel of living flesh. Pulsing muscle membranes glistened with mucus, and every breath I took filled my lungs with the taste of iron sweat. From the tunnels, darkness came the silhouettes of tortured souls. One reached out with a skeletal hand, eyes void of hope, and in that gesture I saw my own fear reflected back. Emerging from the tunnel, I found myself perched on a precipice overlooking a vast amphitheater of suffering. Dozens of figures writhed on a floor of crimson sand, their bodies twisted into grotesque shapes. They screamed in unison, voices of men and women I once knew, a childhood friend whose laughter became mockery, a former colleague whose trust one betrayed, my own reflection crying out in torment. Each face flickered like a dying candle, revealing the countless wounds I had inflicted. A towering judge stood at the center, its robes woven from starlight and shadow. Its face was blank, an obsidian mask polished to mirror my expression. With a gesture, it summoned me forward. Trembling, I stepped onto the sand. The judge spoke without moving its lips, its voice boomed straight into my mind. "You claimed righteousness, yet you judged without mercy. Speak now, for your silence binds you here." My tongue felt like ash. Memories flooded in, the time I refused aid to a beggar because I feared gossip, the harsh words I flung at my brother in anger, the summons I delivered with pride when I should have listened. I wanted to look away, but the judge's mask held me in place. I stammered apologies, but my pleas were swallowed by the amphitheater's roar. The crowd's anguish fed the flames that licked at my ankles. As the heat rose, I saw at the edge of the pit a figure I loved most, my mother. She knelt on burning embers, her hands clasped in silent prayer, tears carving channels through the soot on her cheeks. Her presence both comforted and shattered me. "Mama," I gasped, but the flames shrieked, drowning out my voice. I fell to my knees beside her, trying to shield her with my body, but the sand burned through my clothes, and the judge advanced, raising a gavel forged from broken promises. In that heart-stopping moment, I felt every sin combust around me. The world constricted into the crackling of embers and the pounding of my own guilt. My breaths were shallow gasps, each one a confession. I was wrong. I failed you. "I'm sorry," I cried. My mother's eyes met mine, and though her lips moved, I heard no words, only a pulse of grace that whispered through the inferno, "There is still mercy." The judge lifted its gavel to strike, and then time swelled to a slow drip. The echo of that coming blow drummed in my eardrums as the flames surged. Then, just before impact, a white-hot shaft of light exploded through the amphitheater's center, banishing the judge, the crowd, and the sand in one blinding instant. The blinding light vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, plunging me back into roaring darkness. My ears still rang from its impact, like the final crack of a whip, and I found myself suspended above an endless pit of flickering coals. Chains of black iron wound around my ankles, hoisting me skyward until my shoulders scraped against a ceiling of jagged obsidian. Beneath me, a congregation of thousands writhed in perfect agony, their cries merging into a single, bone-chilling wail. I saw faces from every chapter of my life, classmates I had bullied, congregants I had lectured without listening, the orphans I had only briefly fed before turning away. Their eyes, once bright with hope, now bulged with despair as they clawed at me, pleading silently for release. At my side materialized a gaunt figure draped in tattered robes, the gatekeeper of regret. Its face was hidden beneath a hood, but its voice scraped against my mind like nails on stone. "You seek forgiveness, yet you have refused it to others," it hissed. "Speak your truth." I looked down and saw my own reflection in a pool of tar beneath the pit. In its warped surface, I saw every harsh word I had ever spoken leave my lips: "You're not worthy, you're a disappointment, you don't deserve mercy." I remembered the quiet tears of a friend I had judged too harshly, the shame in his eyes when I preached hypocrisy and pride. Each recollection felt like a shard of ice in my chest. Tears mixed with sweat as I slid from the platform into the pit, landing chest deep in boiling resin. I screamed, though the sound felt distant, like I was watching another man die. The gatekeeper drifted closer, brandishing a quill fashioned from splintered bone. "Write your confession," it commanded, pushing a ledger into my hand. The pages were endless, each line his own skin etched with ink made from sorrow and scars. With shaking fingers, I scrolled my failures, the times I lectured parishioners on compassion while withholding my own, the day I judged a grieving widow for her tears, the moments I prized reputation over kindness. Each word burned into the page and etched itself into my heart, as if the ledger consumed my sins and transferred them into my flesh. Behind me, the crowd's wails crescendoed. I felt their anguish coiling around me, and I realized with terror that their suffering was fueled by my refusal to show mercy in life. No act of penance in this realm could erase the pain I had inflicted, only the forgiveness of others might suffice, and they were all trapped here with me. In the center of the pit stood a towering throne carved from shattered commandments and broken vows. Upon it sat the judge of reckoning, its eyes twin embers that bored into my soul. At its feet knelt figures I cherished most, my mother, her hands folded in sorrow, my childhood friend, silent tears staining his cheeks, a young girl I had once dismissed because I thought her too poor to merit kindness. They looked at me not with anger, but with infinite longing for love I had withheld. "Do you see?" the judge's voice thundered. "All your righteousness, all your sermons, they were meaningless when you refused to extend grace." The ground quaked, and sparks rained from the ceiling. Each spark landed on me, searing charcoal footprints along my skin. I fell to my knees before the judge and opened my heart in a guttural plea. I was blind. I glorified doctrine over compassion. I used God's name to elevate myself and crushed those who asked only for mercy. "I am sorry, truly sorry." My voice cracked, and I felt the weight of every plea I had ignored press upon my chest. With each confession, the chains around my ankles loosened, and the boiling resin receded to lukewarm sludge. Yet the judge did not move, nor did the gatekeeper lower its quill. The crowd's wailing intensified, and I realized that repentance alone could not free me. My loved ones must forgive me, and I had no power to grant it within this realm. As I gazed up at my mother's sorrowful face, a single tear fell from her cheek and floated toward me, suspended in midair. In that droplet shimmered an entire lifetime of love. Lullabies, warm embraces, prayers whispered at dawn. It pulsed with the divine spark I had forgotten. Clutching the droplet, I closed my eyes and whispered, "Mother, forgive me, for all I've denied you, for all I've denied others." The drop quivered, then shattered into a million motes of light that drifted upward. Instantly, the chains fell away, and the resin melted from my skin. The judge rose, its embers dimming to a soft glow. The gatekeeper stepped forward, closing the ledger and snapping it shut. A hush fell over the amphitheater of suffering. Then, in a voice that echoed like a distant hymn, the judge intoned, "True mercy begins with the humility to confess, but mercy itself must be shared freely. Go now." The ground gave way beneath me, and I plummeted through a shaft of darkness, clutching the memory of that single tear. The world spun, and I braced for the end, only to be caught by warmth and lifted into a radiant corridor of pure light. Just as I felt the corridor of light would collapse into the void, the presence stepped forward, a figure robed in the purest white, each fold shimmering like woven starlight. His hair was dark yet gleaming, his eyes pools of compassion that held every sorrow I had ever known. I recognized him instantly, Jesus of Nazareth, the Word made flesh, whose mercy I had preached but never fully understood. He raised a hand scarred by nails, and the corridor stilled. The roar of suffering and the clang of iron chains melted away, replaced by a hush deeper than silence. His voice unfolded in my mind like a living melody, "Child, you have seen the depths of despair, but you have not seen the breadth of my love." A gentle wind carried images before me, a widow weeping over her empty home, a broken soldier staring at shattered limbs, an orphan clutching a single, worn toy. Each vision pulsed with pain until Jesus pressed his hand to my heart. At his touch, the scenes transformed, tears turned to hope, the soldier rose to embrace forgiveness, the orphan watched doves take flight. He guided me to a pool of crystalline water beneath a canopy of living light. "Look into this," he said. As I knelt, my reflection fractured into a kaleidoscope of all I had been, proud Imam, a failing friend, sinner begging for mercy. Then his reflection overlapped mine, and I saw not condemnation but acceptance, an unbroken gaze that beckoned me home. "Your faith was rooted in the law," he whispered. "Now let it blossom in love." He placed a finger to my lips, and I felt truth settle like warm rain. My sins did not vanish, but their weight lifted as he stepped back, the corridor opening into a vast field of emerald grass under a golden sky. "Return," he said, "and let your life testify to what you have seen." His final promise echoed in my ears even as the field dissolved, "I have redeemed you, and I will walk with you always." I gasped awake to sterile white walls and the persistent beeping of monitors. My body lay broken, but my mind blazed with the memory of that radiant field. Tubes fed me air and medicine, yet my soul fought for its own healing. Questions roared, how could I reconcile the God of mercy I met with the strict judge I had preached? In the days that followed, each prayer felt fragile. I tried reciting familiar verses, but they tasted hollow without the compassion I'd witnessed. In the mosque's empty courtyard, I wept beneath the moonlight, mourning not just my pain but the cruelty I once justified. Memories surfaced with sudden clarity, the beggar I shunned, the congregation I judged harshly, the moments I wielded faith like a sword. Shame weighed heavy, but beneath it stirred an ember of hope, the whisper that mercy might grow from confession. At dawn, I walked to the nearby river and watched its waters reflect the rising sun. I realized that true faith must ebb and flow like that current, firm in devotion, yet gentle in grace. With trembling hands, I touched the water and vowed to honor both the law and the love I'd glimpsed beyond it. Now, each breath is a battle between old certainties and a new calling to serve through kindness rather than judgment. The struggle is far from over, but every heartbeat reminds me that I survived hell to learn mercy's true face. Each morning I rise before dawn, driven by a hunger I have never known. I pore over both Quran and Gospel side by side, seeking wisdom beyond dogma. In small acts, offering water to a thirsty stranger, listening without judgment to a doubter's pain, I taste the mercy I experienced. A seed of curiosity blooms. What does it mean to love unconditionally? With each step, I walk toward a horizon where faith and compassion meet, trusting that the path ahead is guided by the light I once glimpsed. Since that night, my life has transformed in ways both subtle and profound. I left my role as lead Imam to join an interfaith relief organization, working alongside Muslims and Christians to distribute food, share scripture, and build shelters for the homeless. Each face I meet reminds me of the souls I once passed by, and every grateful smile rekindles the mercy ignited in that hellish crucible. At home, I revised my personal rituals, the dawn prayers intertwined with silent gratitude moments, Quranic verses followed by echoes of Christ's parables. I keep a journal of daily acts of kindness, listening without judgment, forgiving harsh words, offering help without expectation. On nights when doubts assail me, I reread the ledger of my confessions and remember the tear that shattered chains. My relationships have healed. I apologized to the widow I once judged, and she embraced me with tears and forgiveness. I mended bonds with my brother over shared laughter and new understanding. In each reconnection, I sensed the divine spark that transcends doctrine. Now, as I stand beneath Konyo's twilight sky, once a place of strict piety, I feel a peace that surpasses all ritual. The old self, anchored in judgment, has given way to one guided by compassion. My journey is only beginning, to live out the mercy I received, to be a bridge between faiths, and to proclaim by my deeds that love is the truest sermon.